you've got this. It was a very funny joke. I can't think who said it on the internet, but there was a recording where RFK Jr. said he was he was polyamorous, and somebody said, so you've got an openly gay man, a polyamorous person, and neurodivergent people are running Dodge. So it's the most woke administration in American history, which is pretty fucking good.
Campaign slogans echo final scores. Analysis deep as the
All right, Chris, I have a huge smile on my face because I think we've entered such an interesting time. It's season 2 of the Political Fantasy Sports Podcast, and it's either morning in America or dawn or dusk or midnight. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a new day. Welcome back, man.
Thanks, man.
You start us off. What's going on in your world since December 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I look like I'm kind of auditioning to be homeless because I'm moving my office and I'm moving it down the hallway. And so I'm kind of at this basically like, you cheap fuck, just fucking pay somebody to pack you and do it.
Yeah.
But it's literally like 300 feet. And I'm like, am I going to pay like $1,000 to, I'm like, I'm fighting this thing. But anyway, so I apologize for my demeanor here. It's really, there's a lot of stuff going on. And we've talked about this through the last election, that there was a fair amount of stasis in American politics for almost 75 years, and that broke apart, and I think the pieces are breaking apart quicker and quicker. And one of the fun things about, and I say fun as a small f, intriguing, interesting, if you do politics for a living, it's fun, that all of a sudden Republicans have won with this coalition that no Republicans ever seen before, and no Republican consultants ever seen before. And so and if you work in politics like I do, your job is simply to win elections. That's what you do. It's not to make policy. It's not to, go to parties. It's not to do, whatever.
Not to become a saint or, do God's work. It's to win the goddamn election.
I mean, it's a friend of mine says it's Christmas and we sell Christmas trees. But I think that there is some hesitation about, we don't quite know what this looks like. If you look at the Trump coalition, you should have a fair amount of confidence that that coalition will not turn up at a by-election, will not turn up in an even numbered year. And just so I'm not going past our audience, because I'm speaking in Sanskrit sometimes. So what happens during a presidential year is just about everybody who has a pulse will turn out, and low interest voters turn out. For 70 years, the theory on this is that low interest voters were Democrats because they're less educated, they were lower income, tend to be more minority. And so they would show up. So big turnout helped Democrats, small turnout helped Republicans. That's totally been flipped on its head. And if you look from 2016 on, small turnout helps Democrats, big turnout helps Republicans. But now there is this new coalition that doesn't look anything like anything anybody's ever seen before, with a plurality for Republicans of Latinos, a small but meaningful number of African Americans, this kind of blue-collar working class thing with a bunch of rich people. And it's this strange thing that we haven't had before. The betting should be, and if you're going to go to Vegas, this is the way I would bet, that is not sustainable in an even numbered year next year when the congressionals come up. But I'm not so sure. And I'm not so sure because other stuff is falling apart just as quickly. If you look at the networks, and if you look at the structure of the networks, if you look at the ratings of the networks, it's like, they're falling apart. They're falling to the floor. Not to pick on Jim Acosta, but they looked at Jim Acosta's ratings and they said, you're on the midnight shift. And he was like, no, I'm going to go to Substack. Okay, so you're going to go to even smaller audience.
Right.
And during the Trump first term, he was a big voice. You've got this, it was a very funny joke. I can't think who said it on the internet, but there was a recording where RFK Jr. said he was polyamorous. And somebody said, so you've got an openly gay man, a polyamorous person, and neurodivergent people are running Dodge. So it's the most woke administration in American history, which is pretty fucking good, right?
It just hits what I think I've been saying for a long time, is that no one really believes anything the fuck they're saying. is what I really believe. Like, I think the Christian right isn't Christian or right. I think to the right. I don't know if they're actually right on the topics. I'm not going to make that claim, but they're not actually to the right. That isn't what they are really voting on. I don't think that anybody, to your point, I think nobody cares if I think they could come out, Trump could come out and be like, RFK and I are lovers, and suddenly the Christian right would be like, we're for gay marriage. I don't think it matters. I think what it is that it is almost like a merging of everyone who wants to burn the entire system down. I was listening to a guy on a podcast who was talking about the fall of Rome. And you and I were talking at the end of the last season about the storm before the storm.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was that he added to that context was the storm before the storm gets into the actual things that happen, not the mentality that caused those things to happen, right? I mean, it gets a little bit into like the tit for tat mentality that caused it to happen. But what he said was, and it fits in with that, that Harvard study that among Harvard Business School, would you rather make $80,000 a year and make more than the people in your class, or $150,000 a year, but be the lowest earner in your class? And everyone chose 80K.
Fuck yeah. Oh yeah. And it's such a great, human nature thing.
And I think that's what we're witnessing. It was
That's
what he said about Rome is that among the patrician class in Rome, so like among the senators, there was this feeling that if you weren't at the top, you were falling behind. And among the Roman citizens, everyone felt like they were falling behind. Even though if you look at like throughout the empire as it was going, everyone was gaining, but because there was starting to be splits that were more and more income inequality, there was more comparative, like Rome is falling apart and it's corrupt and it's horrible and we should burn it all down because I'm not doing as well as my neighbor, even though I'm doing better than I was 10 years ago. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think actually income inequality is causing everyone to compare their life to other people's lives. And then they get to the point where they actually aren't trying to get ahead. They're trying to tear down. And I think that's what we're witnessing is this convergence of reactionary and radicals, and then a little bit of people that are kind of still fitting into right-left mentality. And that I think Trump has the biggest coalition that we've seen in a long time because of that.
And you touched on something that the kind of, I'm thinking out loud, which is always a dangerous case. But when you were talking about, I was thinking about RFK Jr. and I was thinking about, I mean, if somebody had said to me in 2016, the Secretary of State or the Department of HHS is going to be run by a 9-month, 29-day pro-choicer, you would go, what? Right? So if you want to jump further, and at the same time, and all of a sudden RFK's now, he was like the darling of like the Rolling Stone of Rolling Stone in that kind of environmental left and stuff. And all of a sudden, like they're against him. So it makes me wonder to your point about coalition and I will call it envy, tear it down, what do you want to do it? What happens? And again, people say, I have these heartfelt views and I will take everybody's word for it. But what happens if all of that was what it really was cultural virtue signaling and cultural vice signaling?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it all is.
Totally.
And,
Totally.
But I do think education is the divide. I mean, that's, but it is a really interesting thing. And it's a really interesting thing for policy. And you see it with the Trump people and with the Trump administration now. And I've got friends in the administration who are, it's great. And I've got people that are, the resistance. But a lot of times they think they're making a really compelling case. And you go, are you fucking insane? There was the president's back to work order that federal workers have to go back in.
Yeah.
It's not particularly controversial in my view because everybody I know goes to work, right? I mean, if you can, There was an NPR story this morning about a woman who had to go to, and she was the sympathetic. It was like, this was like the incipient fascism because they're making her go back to work. And she said, when I have to commute in and actually be in the office 2 days, by the third day, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, maybe the working life isn't for you then. And if like you're a farmer, or if you're working fucking retail at a Home Depot, and you say,
Yeah,
yeah, that third day that I actually have to show up for work and I can't be in my pajamas, it's a
yeah,
fucking burden. I mean, and it's like, but it was this very kind of sympathetic and this, in this NPR earnesty way,
yeah.
but you kind of go like, what are you nuts?
The funny thing is, though, my mom worked from home for the government, and actually, she was on a hybrid schedule. So I think it was like 3 days out, 2 days in, or reverse that, or whatever. She would do nothing more than just open her laptop and work all day long
Yeah.
in her bed, and she was extremely efficient. And honestly, I work from home. I can do my job anywhere. I'm on a computer. You know what I mean? Like, I guess for me, what I'm saying is that the question is not where people work from. The question is, do we have too much redundancy in government? That's a different argument to me. Maybe we do. And if we do, okay, then I see nothing wrong with trimming a little bit of the fat. Totally. But this work from office, I think it's honestly, they're just trying to get attrition. But there's so much DC real estate of buildings that I say sell it and raise money for the deficit. Like,
Yeah.
actually, or actually become a large landlord and rent it out. But the thing is, they can't even rent it out to companies now because nobody needs to work in the office unless you actually are one of those people that needs to work in the office. I think all of that is really just a form of control over workers' lives, rather than setting very clear objectives and holding them to those objectives. So a part of me, I feel both. The thing I do agree on, to your point, I think the idea of moving many of those government offices out into the country, into different parts of the country, is brilliant. There's no reason the USDA should be in DC. The Department of the Interior should not be in DC. Like, I get it. Move those things out. But
Yeah.
the work from home attack, I think, is really just a way of getting people to quit.
Oh yeah, I agree. Like you can't, but it doesn't. It's not going to strike the average person as this kind of onerous. The world is falling when they say you do the work,
Right.
and it's just like, and again, I mean, I'm like you. I mean, but I'm laptop class. I mean, I've always been that. But in terms of moving stuff out, I have a friend of mine that was career civil service and worked all over and worked in forestry and he said the big shock's going to come to a lot of these people, if it ever comes to that they're grinding on a 2-bedroom apartment in fucking Arlington, paying $5,000 a month and doing this commute, and they're going to wind up in
Montana.
Montana, rural Colorado, with a fucking ranch and a truck and like all this free time, and they're going to be like, what was I thinking?
It would be better for honestly, people, they probably wouldn't have an issue going into the office when it was a 5-minute drive in from their ranch into like Colorado, wherever, Durango, Colorado or something. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think move it out. But this is not the most controversial thing that Trump has done in his last 2 weeks, though, right? I mean, you said that the Republicans were the party of the working class. And I keep looking for examples of how they're helping the working class. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually haven't seen how they're helping the working class. Is it true that Trump's executive order rescinded the reduction in the, what's the diabetes, insulin reduction thing? Did he rescind that in an executive order?
No, apparently that's a back and forth thing. A court said you can't do that, and then another court said yes, you can.
He can't rescind it, or they can't force it to stay low?
They can't force it. Both, actually. It was depending upon how you. But I think all this stuff, I think what they're trying to do, and forget where it ends, but I am sympathetic of the executive branch ruling the executive branch with an iron fist and should get his way. And and if you don't get your way, I mean, a lot of the stuff that happened. I mean, there was a really interesting piece, and I think it was in the Washington Beacon. It was one of those things where apparently when Trump said you have to freeze all aid, foreign aid, Rubio asked senior career staff, give us a list of stuff that you think is absolutely essential. And it was like $2 billion of fucking insanity. And, it was like, I mean, literally it was DEI stuff. And you kind of go like, no, nobody can be that tone deaf.
Right,
and it was stuff that wasn't like, PEPFAR, which you need to keep alive because it's saving, millions of lives every year, it's the AIDS initiative
Mhm.
that the U.S. pays
I
for.
think started by Bush, right?
Yeah, W. Bush. It's the biggest, it's the most successful public health act in world history. I mean, it
Yeah.
saved over 50 million people, 50 to 75 million people from AIDS in Africa. And it's this incredibly low cost plan because of how it's structured. And if they pull that apart, it's, you should all rot in hell. But, the idea, I'm kind of sympathetic of them and, what I think they're calling now malicious enforcement, which isn't malicious. I would be a malicious enforcer too. If you say you can do something stupid, I'll do something stupid just to say I'm valuable here. But again, I think all this stuff gets worked out. And, I think that, Trump is now more favorable than when he won the election, which is kind of surprising. And he's going through hearings and he had fucking crazy Matt Gaetz, who they had to get rid of. The Secretary of State or the Secretary of the Department of Defense, the DOD guy, clearly is a drinking problem and is not a person of sterling reputation and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, what was interesting is that both Rubio and the new Secretary of the Treasury, I thought were really friggin' impressive.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Bissett.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting is that he's openly gay and has been, but he looks like central casting. The central casting Wall Street mogul gay guy, that's him. I mean, he's like incredibly polished and one of these guys that has never taken a stupid breath in his life. But I think that, the other thing that we talk about is that there has to be another side to this because politics is all sides and conflict. And the Republican Party is roughly as favorable right now as it is unfavorable. The Democrats are minus 26, which is it's probably a historically low number. It's like Republicans in Watergate number. It's Republicans during the Gulf War in 06 number. And it's a little inexplicable. But then you look at the hearings and you look at you can't be trotting Chuck Schumer up there. You can't have Elizabeth Warren just screaming at the top of her lungs. I mean, Bernie Sanders, God bless him, was talking about onesies today. I mean,
I didn't see that.
Have you seen that?
No.
Okay. It is the greatest thing all day. And it was just and I was like, oh my God, somebody dropped acid in the coffee machine. It was one of RFK Jr.'s goofy anti-vax thing. He was selling on a website of some NGO he did. They were onesies. They were kids. They were stuff. And it had vaccinated and unafraid or vaxxed and cool or whatever, but they were onesies. So Bernie Sanders, I mean, this is the fucking secretary of the fucking HHS who's going to control the health of the United States.
Right.
Bernie Sanders blew up these 20 by 30 blow-ups of the product page of the onesies. And he said, do you approve of this onesie or not? And it was just it's a fucking onesie, I mean, it's who thought this is maybe talk about vaccines, maybe talk about Ozempic. I mean, did you really say that, that Lyme disease was biologically engineered to go after white women or whatever crazy shit he's been saying? And it's maybe focus on that as opposed to onesies. And you look at it and you kind of go, you're old people screaming up there. And that's why you were minus 26.
Yeah.
And and the Washington Post did this thing about, the top candidates for the Democrats in 2028. And you look at it and you go, are you fucking nuts?
I saw that.
And you kind of go what, this?
Yeah. And I will say that there's been this thing for a long period of time that Michelle Obama would have won in 2020 this year. And I think she's one of the top candidates in 2028 where she'd run. I don't see that at all. I completely disagree with that. I think that's a very inside the beltway or coastal opinion. If you talk to anybody who doesn't live in New York or LA or DC about Michelle Obama, she is not liked. So I think that's about as good of a choice as Hillary and Kamala were, to be honest with you.
And again, there's nothing wrong with her.
I don't have an issue with her. I just think the electorate would never vote for her. I don't think people like her.
No, and I also think that it's she would be the female version of Jeb Bush. Whatever the merits of the candidacy, it's oh my God, not another one of these people. It's it's like another Clinton, another Bush, another Obama, another Biden. You're like, please stop.
Totally. It's interesting that you say that. Last week, I had a woman named Elizabeth Anderson. She came on. She ran for U.S. Congress in Alabama's 6th congressional district as a Democrat. I happen to know her from the Tech Association, the Advocacy Association for small and medium-sized tech companies, and I knew she was running over the summer, and she actually performed better than any Democrat in that district since 1992.
That's cool.
And she did it in talking to her by focusing on really one key issue, which was she lives in Shelby County, Alabama, which is the wealthiest county in Alabama, but is a maternity ward desert. You have to drive 75 minutes for the closest to deliver a baby. And that's what she ran on. And she said, and a Republican, she would go and talk to Republicans. And one of them said to her, she said, that I'm so glad you're talking about this. My wife just had a baby and it was ridiculous how far we had to go. And I said, yeah, it's interesting. I was like, I'm going to channel Chris here and say, that sounds like an 80-20 kind of thing. Like 80% of people are going to get behind that.
Yep.
I said, and she said she also leaned into reproductive rights, so abortion a little bit. Yeah. And I said, that does not sound like an 80-20 one. So I don't know if I would have gone there, but I did say our theory, or really your theory, that I guess I attributed to myself as well, but that Democrats have misplayed that issue by putting it on the ballot. I don't need to vote for a Democrat if I can instill it in law that I have the right to an abortion. Do you think this coalition is starting to come apart by self-interest? Starting with, I think, the immigration raids that we're starting to see. I've seen somewhere upwards of like 40% of farm workers haven't shown up in Texas or California. I think there's no shortage, and probably a lot of them are BS on Twitter about people saying I voted for Trump, but now my husband's being deported, or I didn't think he was going to come after us. This is actually also what I mean, is that people want to tear everything down because they think they're tearing somebody else down, not themselves. Right. And when they realize that, oh shit, I was in that house that I wanted to be demolished. But are they also misplaying it kind of the same way the Democrats misplayed it? Where do you think there's such a push now to put things in law that people are starting to have rights and see that politicians are not working in my favor? What if we just instill it in law? What if we just do certain things that we want done and they can't say boo about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is, that's the legislative process. I think that, all this stuff, do the Trump people do overreach on immigration? No, my guess is yes, because that's what everybody does. Everybody does, overreach stuff. At the same time, they mitigated it nicely tonight by having the Lake and Riley thing. The idea, and there was and again, I'm picking on the media just because I don't really watch a lot of TV, but I haven't been feeling well, so I've been home couch surfing. And there was this CNN thing that I caught past, and this woman was complaining about, oh yeah, wait till women figure out how more expensive the blueberries are going to be in their smoothies. And you kind of go like, if your choices on your immigration policy for a nation and people is based upon, can I get cheap shit for my fucking smoothie? You might want to rethink that decision-making matrix morally in your head. So, I mean,
wasn't that the rallying cry though? Like cheap egg?
Yeah. Well, I think eggs was not, you can't see eggs. It was cost to live. And I think eggs were an exhibit, and they're going to be an exhibit. And, after 22 days, I'm not going to blame Trump for the price of eggs not coming down. But I think that, you can have a labor policy, a farm policy, an industrial policy without kind of rampant criminal borders. At the same time, you can't have this crazy onerous thing where people don't want to come to work and they live in fear about maybe not themselves, but their brother or their sister or their cousin that's staying with them. I mean, and that shit is all going to have to get worked out. And I think it's, as opposed to see it as like, it's pendulum swinging back and forth. And they're going to have, and it's going to get figured out, because if shit really gets expensive and they can't get farm workers, and and your blueberries are $18 a pint, people are going to say, no, I don't want this. I want something else.
You know why I don't take the Trump administration seriously and Republicans seriously on immigration? I've had this conversation with my dad a couple of times. E-Verify was supposed to be the law of the land a decade ago. Nobody was supposed to be able to get hired without E-Verify. And it is a system that works. It would work if it was forced on the employers. But what we really want is a system where we can have it both ways. We can get what we want on the cheap, and we can cry foul when we don't, to make ourselves feel better about it. If the first executive order was that every single, it was not even an executive order. If they just said, we're going to finally start enforcing the law that was passed like 20 years ago, I would have said, okay, these guys are taking it seriously, but I don't think they are taking it seriously. I will also give you a hot take, Chris. I actually don't, it doesn't bother me that they're going to round up and deport people that are nonviolent criminals if they're here illegally. I wouldn't do it, but they still are here illegally. And I think that if that's what people voted for and they say they don't want it, to say, well, we do kind of want some of these people here illegally, it kind of does take away from the whole argument. Why don't you just say then, we like cheap labor and go with that? But if you are going to say, yeah, we're going to deport everyone, well, okay, well then cool, deport everyone. Why are we getting surprised about it now?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. And again, I think these things work out. And again, I it's kind of the optimist in me, and they kind of get pushed back and forth. I think you have seen a comeuppance in the, what I will call the Democrat professional class. And now you're going to see it in 2 years in the Republican professional class. What I call the professional grifter class, the NGOs of the world, that you kind of go, what do you guys do again?
Yeah.
We're a homeless coalition. How many houses do you build? I mean, I always love when there's
100%.
I always love when there's like homeless, summits, and
Totally.
everybody there. And it's like, and you look at it and you go, hey, is anybody fucking here that builds a house? I'd like to talk to them.
I've been to so many of those in LA when I was doing real estate development.
Yeah.
God.
And you kind of go and again, it's fine if the fix is in. I get that. But, but I think that it is going to be kind of an interesting thing. I don't think the Republicans can hold this coalition. However, I don't think the Democrats can form one either. And I think that, so what does that mean? I don't know. I need to think about it. I mean, I just got back 800 pages of a survey I'm trying to sort through. And it's this very interesting thing about where people get information, not what you think. And more importantly, when they make choices. So if you get information, when do you decide?
Right.
And so again, I think we're in totally uncharted territory, which is kind of exciting.
Part of me thinks it makes our democracy may be the strongest it's been in a long time with what you just said. And I actually agree with you. I think it's all up for grabs. Yeah. So from election to election, politicians are going to have to, or the parties or politicians are going to have to prove why they should be elected. I don't know necessarily that doesn't also lead to a potential over populism that leads in a bad direction. But I do think that it bodes well for the populace, the power of the voice of the people in a way. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm a little optimistic about it as well.
Yeah. And again, I think all this stuff is a good thing. And I think that groups that were previously did not have power or were Black Democrats and Latinos are much more important in a Republican coalition than they are in a Democratic coalition. Because the way the Republican Party is currently constituted electorally, Republicans cannot win nationally without those votes. So they have a tremendous amount of leverage, whether the party people and whether the senators, fuck you. I mean, that would not be the first time somebody said, thanks and fuck you, but they have a tremendous amount of leverage. I want to jump back to your guest, not the guest.
Oh yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah. And she was really interesting. And I thought the reproductive rights, when she was doing her thing, I thought this is brilliant. And she went reproductive rights, and I went,
yeah.
And so this is kind of my matrix. If I said to you, my number one issue is that like the maternity situation, if you want to give birth in this county is ridiculous. It's 75, and the fact it's putting women's lives and babies' lives and families, they're at risk because we don't have enough places where people can give birth.
Uh-huh.
And then I asked you, what is that person? Is that person pro-life or pro-choice? I would probably lean maybe just 51% that they were pro-life.
Uh-huh.
But I don't really know. I could simply say, well, women's health, as she said, women's health. She's probably pro-choice. And she has this perfect construct of being everything to everybody on an 80-20 question. It's probably a 90-10 question.
Yeah.
But the moment you use the phrase women's reproductive rights, I go, okay, you're a national liberal Democrat.
Right.
And I give you all this other baggage.
Yeah.
I think sometimes down ballot candidates, and again, I'm not picking on her because I think the issue was brilliant. And I heard her and she really has her shit together and hopefully she runs again. But down ballot candidates think that they have to be interesting or they have to be more about one thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going from my life, president, governor, senator, and like all the way down here. And it's just like, yeah, I don't need your 15 fucking point plan. It's like, you're going to get more federal funds so my daughter doesn't have to drive 75 miles when her water broke. I'm for that. And that's all you have to be. There's a very famous case in 1970. They called her, it's a California campaign, and I'm drawing a blank, but they called her the pay toilet lady.
Huh.
Prior to 1970, all public facilities in the state of California were pay toilets. They were not free. So if you had to take a leak, you had to go to the bathroom. You had to go in with your dimes or nickels or quarters and get fucking change so you could take a leak in a government-run building.
Yeah.
She ran, and she was Democrat, and she beat the incumbent in the primary. And what she said was, basically, I don't know shit about anything, but if I'm elected, I have the power to get rid of pay toilets in the state of California, and that's what I'll do. And she won. Now, apparently, she was a disaster and didn't work out, but that's the thing she did. But again, a statewide in a big state, that's all she had to be. She didn't have to be, I'm going to readjust the prepayment tax on corporate fourth quarter. I didn't know.
Right. And her Wikipedia page doesn't say disaster. It says she's the pay toilet lady. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's what you want to be. I mean, you want to be the maternal, you want to be the, my grandson and my daughter are alive and healthy because you got federal funds to move this in on them. I mean, that's who you want to be.
I actually think Elizabeth should run for state level office rather than federal anyway, because she can actually implement that health policy. She could build a coalition around that. I think she could achieve that, and then that would maybe propel her somewhere. Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth, I think is a very she's a believer and she wants to help people. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And maybe she'll make a good client, Chris. I don't know. Maybe have to connect with her. Let me ask a question. I do want to touch on, because I don't think this should go overlooked. And I think we should talk a bit more about how the Democrats are completely misplaying the moment. But before we leave Trump, what is is there any realm of the future where Canada becomes the 51st state, Panama, we invade and own the Panama Canal, and we buy Greenland for $100 trillion that we don't have?
Yeah.
Which would, by the way, would be an orgy of every single thing that Republicans said they were against. Don't add any new states. Don't spend any more money, and no foreign wars. It would but now that Trump says it, every Republican is on board with all three of those things. But go ahead.
It's like amend the Constitution for a third term too.
Yeah.
By the way, I think there's money to be made there as a consultant. By the way, that sounds.
Was that Andy Biggs that introduced that? What was it? Who was it that introduced?
It might have been Andy Biggs.
I think it was.
But so I think the Canada stuff and the Panama stuff was just kind of stupid, silly stuff. I thought it was interesting is that another political career that Donald Trump ended was Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, because Trump kind of said that, and then all of a sudden, like Justin Trudeau came to Mar-a-Lago and bent the knee, and it was like, and talk about weak. Oh my, like you weak pussy.
Yeah.
as opposed to the president of Mexico, who
Yeah.
basically sent him he sent a polite but a fuck you letter.
Yeah. I like her. I like Scheinbaum.
And I think they respect that. But here's this is kind of trivia thing. Apparently, this is the fourth time that the United States has thought about buying Greenland. And
I think during World War II, we took it because when the Netherlands were conquered by the Nazis, right? We actually took Greenland and then we gave it back, right?
yeah, or there was some kind of a deal. But apparently during, I think it was the Louisiana Purchase, because they wanted to bracket stuff. Or no, not Louisiana Purchase. It was Seward. It was the
Seward's Folly. Alaska, right?
And they thought, let's get Greenland too.
Yeah.
But the real interesting, like, legal part internationally is that Greenland may or may not be Denmark. They're probably an independent country, because apparently after World War II, when the U.S. did this transfer back, they just said, you're ours, and there's no force of law. It's just kind of like, I guess so.
But did you see that literally $600 million a year is spent on Greenland, and it's only like 40,000 people that live there? They transfer, it costs them $600 million a year on free healthcare, free university, all of these things. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, these people are never going to vote to be Americans. They see the news. They see our healthcare system. What makes you think and honestly, they shouldn't want to be independent either. They should keep taking that $600 million from Denmark.
And the whole great thing about even the whole idea of Greenland is a scam. I mean, it was Eric the Red who got kicked out of Iceland, who said, come to Greenland. It's green. It's not snowing. Everybody went, oh, okay. What the fuck do we know? And they went, yeah.
And I'm not knocking Trump. Like, listen, I like ambitious ideas. I don't know if it's actually his idea, but I like those ideas. And if you want to buy a country or you're going to do something like that, okay, I think that's smart. I don't know if it's smart, but I think it's something that's worth exploring. I think it could be good. It's more of the saber rattling on Panama and the talk of making Canada the 51st state. I think some of this is just trolling people. I don't really personally want a president that trolls people, especially when it's talking about invading to take land.
Yeah.
But, I think the Greenland one is the one where I'm like, man, yeah, maybe. I think, honestly, Denmark is like, oh, shit, now we're going to lose Greenland. Even if they don't go to the U.S., they're going to vote now to be independent. And we've lost it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm, again, I think a lot of it's trolling. I think a lot of it's trolling. And here's what I do think, though. And, I won't approve of it because I'm a fairly sober, like, I don't want government I just want government not to fuck up and try to be as efficient, and, like, you should never be in the news if it's going well. But I think that one of the problems that Democrats have is that whatever you think of Trump, it's kind of fun, and all this shit's kind of fun. And his press conferences are he's having press conferences. Actually, he's doing very well, I think, by the way, as opposed to the first term, but in terms of handling himself. But there was a fun factor with it. And it's just like, if there was a New York Magazine cover this week, and it was called Return of the Cruel Kids. And it was from the youth, some African-American 22-year-old activist, his inaugural party. And it's this kind of cover of, and it looks like an 80s kind of a yuppie thing. It looks like an old J Press advertisement. And you look at it and you kind of go like, and New York was kind of, very kind of school marmish about, oh, these kids are so full of themselves and they're drunk and they don't care. And it's like, yeah, I'm 24 fucking years old and I'm out having a party. And it was like this lack of fun and this lack of enjoyment about stuff. And I think that there was a, whatever you thought of Bill Clinton, I never thought he wasn't having fun.
Yeah. I get that.
And you wanted to be around, and he was charismatic because it was fun.
I think you kind of got that with Obama too, don't you think?
Yeah, there was a certain, Republicans would lose their mind, but they lost their minds on fucking everything, lost their minds on pantsuits. But like, his March Madness bracket, his playlist.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all great because you kind of go, okay, I like that song too. I wouldn't have picked Gonzaga. I mean, you kind of do that whole thing.
Right.
But it's fun, as opposed to we had a giant carrot for 4 years. But I think people react to that. I mean, they don't want to be hectored. They don't want to be lectured. They don't.
Yes. They don't want to be talked down to like they're stupid.
No.
You know, I think that's one of the ways that the Democrats are misplaying this is that everything is a 9-alarm fire. You know what I mean? And it's like, everything isn't. I don't necessarily agree with the way John Fetterman has. I think he understands his political necessity. And I don't agree with 100% of where he's going necessarily, but I actually do think that he does understand that we can't treat everything as if it's wrong just because Trump is doing it. And for me personally, I kind of think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but if the Democrats want to take back any of the levers of power in DC, my sense is that the best thing they can do is cast their votes against things, talk out about them, but let them happen. Like, don't do any of the process-oriented shit, like the pocket filibusters and all of that bullshit. Let it all happen, because I actually do think that the Republicans are already on a roll to cause more pain for a lot of people, and nothing will help you more than them giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Hubris often leads to destruction.
It's usually, say it was Napoleon, but it wasn't Napoleon. It might have been Alcibiades or maybe it was Sun Tzu, but it was like, never get in the way of an enemy when he's in the process of destroying themselves.
Yes.
But I think to your point is that everything is in a 9-alarm fire.
Totally.
And it's exhausting because you don't get to pick your places. And, you know, the idea that people losing their mind because we're deporting people that shouldn't be in the country legally. And it's like, you can say, okay, we need to have another policy, but it's not like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, it's concentration camps.
Totally.
And I think the average voter knows that. By the way, Fetterman brings up a really interesting...
Can I say something about what you just said about deporting and concentration camps, though? I will say that while I agree with you, it is not, and it is just the law, and, you know, we've done it before. I do think, I read today, they're looking at putting illegal immigrant detention camps at Guantanamo Bay. I think that is a really bad fucking look, given that's the clusterfuck that came out of putting terrorists in Guantanamo Bay.
By the way, there's already a deportation camp in Guantanamo.
Wasn't publicized though.
No, it's his now.
Yeah, why publicize it?
Right.
Why even mention it? Well, you know what I mean?
Right. Again, 80-20 questions, right? I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So
nobody wants to hear the word Guantanamo anymore. Nobody wants to hear it.
No. There was a really interesting kind of political thing that happened this week, is that within the industry, there's been a huge amount of fallout among Democratic consultants and Democratic firms about, like, how the fuck did you spend $2.5 billion and lose? And where did the money go? And how did you spend it? And what was your advertising? What was the buy? And what was the targeting? All these things, it's a longer discussion. But there was the thought that all the Harris stuff for this PAC and super PAC, by the way, they were doing a lot of stuff by AI. I know some consultants were working on it. And what they would do is the consultant would say, write a spot, and they would send it in for approval, and they would do an AI version, and they would A/B test, which is the dumbest fucking thing in the world, because they wanted to quantify and codify a solution. You know, it's like calling a football game. It's like quarterbacking a football game. It's like every play is a little change and everything is a little different. It's all human nature. And you're not going to say, I mean, it's kind of like we used to jokingly call it scientific socialism, that if you only do exactly what I tell you, you'll be fine, because it's all going to work out. And, you know, every 80-20 question doesn't always work if the candidate and if the rest of it isn't in good shape. And so they ignored this stuff. So anyway, so there's been this big fallout. So a new firm was formed this week from the consultants that did Fetterman, Gallegos in Arizona, and Bernie in 16. And the new firm is called Fight, F-I-G-H-T, fight.com, I think. God bless them. They got that website, which is pretty friggin'.
That's actually, I can't believe it was still available, or they spent a lot of money to buy it from whoever they had it.
Yeah. But so it's that, and basically they are going to try to imbue candidates with a little personality and a little fun, a little vibe. And if you look at their actual spots, it's not these ponderous kind of like, you know, sad woman looking out window, you know, and it's like in slow motion, black and white. Their stuff isn't like that at all. So it's a really interesting sea change. And it will be interesting to see if a bunch of the big Democratic mega firms break up or dissolve and become something else. And if this is the new tiki way to do it.
It'd be interesting to see who they start to work with, right? Because that could be a real kind of canary in the coal mine, maybe, of like what's coming, a harbinger of where they see possibility, right? I've never thought, well, I don't know about never, but as long as I've been actually giving it thought, I've never thought that Newsom had a chance on the national stage. I know you're in California, the fires, I think his brand is just like more of incompetence and everything else. I don't know if that's fair or not necessarily, because I don't know the details of it to make a judgment on that. But I will say his presence and demeanor and the image of him talking to Trump on the tarmac when he landed, he was very commanding. And Melania let him kiss her. She didn't let Trump kiss her at the inauguration. So I do think that he did earn himself some PR points in that moment, but who would you put money behind? I mean, people are already starting to put their campaigns together for 26, right? So who would you put money behind for maybe a House run or a Senate run next year that could be future material for the Democrats?
I think that the two most interesting guys, and I've been saying it forever, are Josh Shapiro and Andy Beshear in Kentucky.
28.
Yeah, I think both of them are really interesting because they're solidly liberal, but they also are very deft at not getting caught in insane speak.
Yeah.
And there was something, and I'll pick on my governor, Gavin Newsom, right now, that sometimes when politicians get in crisis, their first reaction is to lie. Prevaricate or get out of it. There was a news clip that's devastating that during the fires that some woman ran up to Newsom and said, "Governor, what are you going to do? The house burned down, blah, blah, blah." And he says, "Well, I'm talking to the president right now." And she says, "I don't believe you. Put him on speaker," which is kind of ballsy saying to the governor, running up and saying that. And he says, "Well, I can't get a cell signal. I'm trying to get him, but the call keeps dropping. So I can't, but I'm going to work on it." And then it goes to this other thing. So clearly the first thing was a lie, because it wasn't, I'm talking to him now. It's like, I just talked to him, I want to talk to him again, but I'm not talking to him now. Is like, and then the idea that you're the governor and you're in this natural disaster and you don't have a fucking satellite phone talking to the president of the United States and fucking FEMA means you're an imbecile.
Right.
And
in the 5th largest economy in the world or whatever it is. Right?
Yeah. It's a satellite. I mean, I have a fucking satellite phone when I'm supposed to go into crazy shit. And, I go to Montana, I bring a satellite phone because you don't know. You know? And it's like, so the idea that you're driving around with the governor in a firefight, in a historic blaze.
How does his detail not have a satellite phone in that situation? You know what I mean?
Right. I mean,
what about Pete Buttigieg? Do you think his career's done, or I mean, do you think? I don't think his career's done, but I
don't think it's done. I think he's going to be a wonderful host on some cable show. I mean, he lives in Michigan now. He moved to Michigan.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they're talking about him running for Senate.
I can see that.
And you kind of go like, okay, but you've only lived there since 21. You're from Indiana, and you're the Secretary of Transportation, and you maybe did not such a great job. Maybe you did. Who the fuck knows? I have no idea. But it's like, you kind of go, you're really good at talking on Fox News.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of professional politician, that kind of style thing, I think is really, I think it is more Fetterman. I think it is. Yeah. I think it is 2016 Bernie. I mean, Bernie now is like 9,000 years old, but it's like, but that kind of like, even Gallegos. I mean, there was something a little different. Kristen Sinema. You don't have to like them, but there's something a little different about him that you kind of go like, oh, okay, I know this guy. And again, I think I don't approve of Fetterman's dress. It doesn't matter, but I look at him and I go, he's an interesting guy that I would not, if I sat down in a bar next to him, I could probably have a conversation, I mean, but frankly, if Sheldon Whitehouse sat down next to me, I'd be like, check, I got to go,
Where do you think the power center is actually lying among the Republicans and the Democrats right now? I mean, interesting. Mitch McConnell's become very interesting in the last 2 weeks, in my opinion. with DUI, whatever his face is, and what he said about Trump being unfit for office. I mean, he's really not holding back. I think he's whatever. But I mean, the number of people that call him in my life that I know that call Mitch McConnell a rhino is so delicious for me. Yeah. But the power center is an interesting one for me. I'm trying to figure it out. I actually don't think it's Trump, and I don't even know that it's actually an elected official at this point.
You think it's Elon?
I don't know, actually. I think your friend, what's her name? The Ice Queen. What's the chief of staff? What's her name?
Oh, Susie Wiles? Not my friend.
Yeah.
Michael.
I mean, I think she cucked Musk pretty good this week. You know what I mean?
I think, again, you know, I mean, she's a lovely person. Again, I've done stuff with her. I've done stuff against her. I've got her high heel marks on my back from walking all over my campaign. But, like, underestimate her at your own rip.
Oh, I'm not going to bullshit you. I wouldn't cross her.
No.
No way.
So Casey did. So this is the great piece. It is gossip. I said I will not. This is the gossip that she was working for the state party in Florida, and apparently her and Ron DeSantis' wife did not get along. She pushed her out. It happens. She gets a job. Susie Wiles gets a job with a lobbying firm in Tallahassee. Apparently, the word came down that no, you can't hire her. So they pushed her out of a lobbying firm after they pushed her out of the state party. So literally she was unemployed. Another lobbying firm who doesn't give a fuck what the DeSantis say came in and gave her a job just because she's a, good person and she's smart and that. But it's like, but imagine going like, the governor's wife is pushing my ass out of fucking a job in Tallahassee, and now I'm chief of staff to the leader of the free world. I mean,
yeah,
I would have to wear the Depends every day going into the office.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it's her necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think there is a power dynamic somewhere that we're missing. I don't think it's Elon. It would be more, in my estimation, it would be more Peter Thiel anyway.
How about Ramaswamy? Ramaswamy got booted, man.
Oh, man. There's nothing I love than when an opportunist loses their opportunity. I got to tell you. That's like one of my favorite things in the world.
Holy cow, that was
Yeah, it was.
So who I think is interesting in this is John Thune, the new Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah.
Because Thune is an institutional guy. I think he's very appealing. He's almost too appealing. He's like a gym dude. He's gym bro kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a really interesting kind of guy. But he clearly likes the role of the Senate as a Senate thing. And, they gave him Hegseth, but they got rid of Gates in fucking 2 seconds. And, those kind of things. I think he's somebody to watch as a power center simply because he seems like he's playing a very subtle but sophisticated game. But we'll see.
Well, I think to wrap it up, I got a couple questions for you, just super lightning round.
Yeah.
Super Bowl's in like a week from this coming Sunday. Chiefs in Philadelphia. Which one represents the Democrats and which one represents the Republicans?
Ooh, good question. I think the Eagles are the Democrats.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I would have agreed with you until this most recent kind of thing that we've been seeing where to me, the Democrats are actually more Kansas City at this point. And do you see the video of the Phillies fan? It's not even actually funny. The guy's just from the video looks like a complete fucking scumbag, but he's like yelling and calling horribly atrocious things to, I don't remember what team it was, but a woman and her boyfriend's filming it. And, there's like people that say the boyfriend should have hit him or something. I'm like, yeah, right. You go to jail over something stupid or whatever. It's a Phillies fan. Did you see this video?
Yeah. He has been banned for life from the park.
Yeah.
He got banned. So, but the kicker to the story, which is why this was one of my favorite stories too. I can't believe you're saying this. I just love this so much. You know what his job was?
No. Or I'm going to say he was a DEI person specifically for women.
Yes.
No way.
Yes.
Are you shitting me?
Yes.
I completely just pulled that out of my ass just now.
He worked for a human services kind of company, healthcare company, and he was in the DEI department.
And does this guy still have his job?
No, they fired his ass.
I mean,
they
the sad thing is you want him to be punished, but like now his whole family's punished because this douchebag doesn't have a job,
On the other hand, it's like if I were him, I would have like mag it up and say, yeah, all those years, I apologize, but all those years of doing that DEI shit, I just cracked. I mean, that's what I think.
Honestly, yeah.
Post traumatic stress, and
I had the woke mind virus. I was going crazy.
yeah, I broke it, and I'm sorry, but
But I think seeing that though, and kind of some of the other things over time, I think I'm not equating MAGA to that, but I do think that like unnecessary vitriol is indicative of part of the coalition that we were talking about, like just the anger. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's why Kansas City's been winning for so long that they are the establishment. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know. I feel like the Republicans in this one.
I think because Patrick Mahomes and his wife are Trump.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, they're pro-Trump.
And that's kind of where then I go quarterback and but anyway, as a Philadelphia native, I'm all eagled up, man.
Are you for real?
Oh yeah.
Kansas City's what, 3-point favorites?
If you took it,
1.5 actually. I think
it was 1.5. If you took it that night, it was 1.5, and I would take that 1.5 in 2 seconds.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's yeah. I mean, I don't. Maybe live in.
I think the last thing I'd ask you is, what are your are there any districts that will flip based on those who resign to take a Trump cabinet? So what's her face in New York, and Michael, what's his name in Florida, and some of the others. Gates is not going to flip. Obviously,
yeah, no, Gates won't flip. I don't think Stefaniak will flip. I think one of them is going to flip, and I can't think which one it was because it was. But there was apparently one that kind of flipped already. Short term was, but it was, I think it was a state Senate thing that flipped.
Okay.
But it was like a 6,000 person race.
All right.
But again, I think that if I had to bet money right now, I would think Democrats are going to control the House next election
in 26.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to control the Senate. I used to think they would. I don't think they have a shot to control the Senate, but the House thing. But when we started our hour, I said I think all bets are off, and I should say I would think normally that this coalition can't hold, but I'm not sure because I think the world is a rapidly changing place, and I think the rules are gone.
Interesting times.
Yeah.
What a great way to leave it for the next episode, where we see what else has been happening since the rules are all gone.
All right, man. Well, look, good to be
but
back.
There's so much more to talk about. The TikTok and everything else. My mind's just. Have you seen people on Red Note?
Yes.
People the government said you can't be on TikTok because China's bad. Yep. And people said, okay, we're going to go to Red Note where we actually have to take an oath to the Communist Party of China.
Yeah.
And it was started by Trump. Democrats went along with it like fucking idiots, in my opinion. Yeah. And then Trump got to come along and be the savior of it.
Yeah. The whole thing is really interesting, and the new, the whole new, the Chinese AI thing, the super AI thing.
Oh yeah. DeepSeek.
And I'm like, yeah, is that a Potemkin village? I know what they're saying it is, but like open source it and let me know.
Right.
But
all right,
man. Well, good talk.
I'll see you next week, my friend.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right. There it is. Episode 2 is in the bag. The first one with Chris and I back together, and we are in a new season. Not just of this show, by the way, but the show of life, or the simulation, or whatever we're in that is making this our reality. We didn't cover a tenth of what's been happening in only the 2 weeks since Trump took office, let alone everything that happened after that. We didn't talk about Hunter Biden's pardons. We didn't talk about the whole family pardons or Milley or whatever. We didn't talk about any of that. And yet an hour went by because this is the reality that we live in. I will say, I did mean what I said, and I know Chris meant what he said. I do think that the American population can swing either way right now. There's no loyalty really for the unaffiliated that are deciding elections. And that's a good thing. So that means if you want to win, you just have to convince people. It's not in stasis, it's in flux. So thank you for joining us. We referenced Elizabeth Anderson from Alabama's 6th congressional district. I so enjoyed that Chris enjoyed that episode, even though he couldn't make it last week. And he was, there you have it. I mean, he's a believer in Elizabeth's future as a congresswoman or as somewhere in politics. He believes she has a future. So we had her on here. So when she's president or senator or governor, whatever it might be, we can say she was our guest when. So thank you for joining us. We'd love for you to start this season with comments, questions. We'd love to have you on the show. So please reach out to us. Tell us what we can talk about, what you'd like to hear us talk about, and we'll see you in the next one.